Okay, so now we have some calculations to do related to a graph, okay? That's one of the graphs in your packet. This is a lot like the graph in your packet reflected through the y-axis. I think everybody sees that because everybody was able to find the graph that was similar to this one, right? I think people did real well with that. So using my values again, where A is 5, B is 4, C is 6, I've got 2 minus B over 10. So value of B is going to be 2 minus 4 over 10. Now you could write that out as fractions, and a lot of times I want you to write fractions, but for the purpose of putting numbers on the number line, decimals are going to give you a better picture, okay? And the fractions all have denominator 10, so it's really easy to convert to the decimal form in the case of these problems. And then C, I think was then A plus B, right? So the value of C is going to be A plus B, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, some of you went back to your original values of A and B, but A ain't your original value no more, okay? Put in proper mathematical grammar. So, C is going to be 0.1. Okay? And that might not have been the best choice for the algorithm, but that's okay, we can use it. Okay, so what's the first question? Estimate the y-coordinates of the points in the curve for which x equals a and for x equals b, right? Now, the first thing I said here was, first line of the problem, let the x values in the graph run from -2 to 2, the values in the y-axis above the x-axis from 0 to 4. So that means we're going to have -2 here, then we're going to have 2 here, then we're going to have 4 here, and then I can easily cut that in half to figure out where 2 is, cut that in half to get the value 1, and put 3 halfway between 2 and 4. And then I can, take this interval and cut it in half to find out where -1 is and 1 here. And I can subdivide those, but that's fine, whatever you need to do. Okay, so now the graph would look like this, except your graph is the reverse of this one, right? Okay? So everybody understand that? Okay, very simple. Okay, now the first question is, what's the y-coordinate of the points on the curve? What are y-coordinates of the points on the curve for which x equals the a variable and for which x equals the b variable, right? Okay, so, well, when x equals the a variable, what's the value of x? In my case, it's -1.5, right? So right here is -1.5. And then let's go ahead and put the b value on here. B is 1.6, so that's going to be like a little more than halfway between 1 and 2, so I'm going to put it there. Okay? Now everybody can do that, right? Especially since I just showed you. Okay? Now we want the value of y for which x is, the value on the curve where x is -1.5, right? How are we going to find that? Well, let's just take some points in the curve. What's the value of x for this point? ballpark estimate.
Negative 0.5.
Well, it looks like X is about maybe negative 0.6. Okay? So is that negative 1.5? No. No. Okay, what about this point? Yeah, that looks like X is about, I'm guessing, negative 1.8. Okay? Thinking about there, right? So how am I going to find the value of Y when X is negative 1.5? We want a point on the curve whose x-coordinate is negative 1.5, right? Well, where are the points whose x-coordinates are negative 1.5? Well, they got to be directly above and below this one. Okay? So we can sketch maybe a dotted line that goes through this, or close to it. Okay? So might be a little hard to read. It says x equals negative 1.5 for every point on the dotted line, right? And if that dotted line extends all the way up and all the way down, those are the only points where x equals negative 1.5. So x equals negative 1.5 above and below this point. What's the y value on the curve? Where's the point on the curve where x equals negative 1.5? My finger is mobile. Tell me, up, down, right, left. I want to get to a point on the curve where x is negative 1.5, right? So it has to be on the curve. Also has to be on this line because that's the only place x value of negative 1.5 occurs, right? So where am I going to go?
Y equals 2.6.
Y equals what?
2.6.
Okay, that's reasonable. I think it's a little higher than that, but I don't want to fight you over it. Okay? It's reasonable. And reasonable is all I really care about right now. Okay? And later on, we'll try to get good at these things so that you'll get the same results I did. Assume we got good. Yeah, no. Okay, now, seems fairly clear that if it's on the curve, as it says it has to be, and if x is negative 1.5, and if the only way x is negative 1.5 is if it lies on this line here, that the point on the curve is this one, right? Okay? And then if we come straight across here, okay, 2.6 isn't bad. The way I drew it, it looks more like 2.9, but like I say, I'm not going to argue. Okay? That makes sense? Well, see if you can very quickly answer the first question.